Yes.
With this in your mind, maybe I will move on a little bit just to think you about what really. And just to back up the things that I said. I mean, why we need agile? I mean, I'm just trying to, since you all are kind of technical people, I'll try to be a little bit technical, but this is taken in from a report called version one report. How many of you have heard about it? It's a kind of agile way done by globally by a company called version one, and this is the latest research that they have found. And I mean, just simple comparison. Like if you take the traditional methods, like for example, waterfall and agile way of development, quite clear that, things like visibility, adaptability, risk, and value. I mean, there's a drastic difference between the traditional way of doing developments and the agile way of doing development. And I'm just going a little bit deeper, just looking at statistics. This is a kind of a relatively old survey that was done, and this is the clear comparison between waterfall and agile. And as you can see, I mean, even from the statistical data, projects which have followed agile way of development comparatively to the traditional methods, they have succeeded. It's not that agile is a kind of silver bullet. It also has its own pitfalls as well. But still, compared to traditional way of doing things, I mean, we had got more results. That's why people think even in the industry, agile way of doing things are more beneficial to an organization, and it is more beneficial for a project. I mean, maybe you all might know. I'm just trying to go to this stuff right there now. Like, I mean, a long time back, I think it was around 2004. What has happened was during that time there were different people who came up with different processes. Like, for example, rational unified processing, and then there's the extreme programming, visual-driven development. They have a different kind of processes, brought up by different people. And what they did was in US, they got together and then they just had a kind of a brainstorming session to see whether they have kind of common things between their different processes. And then the outcome of this particular gathering was actually the Agile Manifesto. And what Agile Manifesto says is actually, it simply says 4 core values and 12 different principles. And then what they said was, whatever the development process which contains those 4 core values and the 12 different principles can be labeled as an agile. And I will not expect you to go through this, but remember it's like this 4 values. But the one important thing is actually people have a kind of a myth saying that agile is not about having documentation. It is not. If you look at the footnote here, it clearly says that while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left. That means there is a value on the items on the right. Because if you take an industry, you need to have contract negotiation to win customer reach. But what it says is, for example, contract negotiation over customer collaboration. So Agile prefers having more customer collaboration. Not about not having this item. It's all about having these items more. And going through the principles. So again, there are 12 different principles. You can always Google and look at these principles and see what does this mean. And I mean, as I mentioned earlier, also, Agile itself is not exactly a development process. It's more like an umbrella where it just sets up a kind of a set of framework where it says you have to have these 4 core values and 12 different principles. And then there are different processes like, for example, Scrum, Kanban, Lean, which are kind of agile development processes in different contexts. And that's how Agile came into the industry. And what I try to do is maybe I will just try to pick up a few different principles and I will just try to map those principles into real context. Because normally, I mean, even in our organization, what has happened is actually if you take process or whatever, I mean, the guidelines and the rules are quite simple. It's not rocket science. Anyone can just simply read it and then understand. But the actual problem comes in where you have your concept or line of thinking, and then you try to map those things into real workings, or maybe your day-to-day life. And then it doesn't matter. And that's where the real complexity comes in. Because of that, I just try to maybe take very, very simple, normal examples and try to, elaborate these concepts a little bit, but not each and every principle. Maybe I'll pick few principles. If I take the first one, for example, it talks a lot about continuous delivery. Now, I'll just try to, when we say continuous delivery, everyone understands what it means. But let's see how we understood the concept into real life. Okay? I'll just take a very, very, very simple example. Let's say we work in a kind of a constructing organization where our business is to construct houses. And we know that according to the resources that we have, let's say to build one house, it takes 6 months. And we do have a project. The deliverable of project would be to build 6 houses. And our goal will be to maybe build 6 houses and then deliver it and then do the sales and make money. And now remember, if you take any process, what do we need a process for? That would be the first question that needs to be answered. I mean, if you take any context, if you have unlimited resources, then you really don't need to have them. But in a business organization, we are always running out of resources. It can be time, it can be people, it can be technology, whatever. But then we have to make sure that we get the maximum out from whatever the resources that we have. So in this context also, let's say, okay, we have a certain amount of resources, we have a certain set of people who have a certain amount of skills, and those people will need 6 months to build a house, and we need to build 6 houses. Can you think about the approach that we should take? What would be the best approach? Just think free. Don't be too serious. The question would be like, now we own a construction organization. Our project is to build 6 houses, and we know that to build one house it takes 6 months, and there can be different ways. Like you need to lay the foundation, you need to build. There are different things which involves building a house, right? So my question would be, what would be the approach that we should take to build these houses?
Start with one.
Start with one, okay.
Find out if possible this can be done in parallel.
Okay.
And find out the process just sequentially, because input of one process to be output of one process to be further. You cannot build the building unless you have a foundation.
Yeah.
And foundation will take another 15 days probably to set it up.
Yeah.
So sequentialize and parallelize where possible. And because we want to optimize the resources, use the same resources, same job. Maybe once they have done one foundation and they got 15 days, they can do same time for the foundation. Basically, break them small into smaller unit, specialize to do the job of smaller unit, parallelize and sequentialize.
Okay, I'm just trying to ask some questions based on that. Let's say we start off with one house. Now you have set of people. Maybe let's say you have 6 people, not 6, maybe 10. Let's say you have 2 people who are good at building the foundation, and then you have let's say 3 more people who are good at building the wall, and then you have a carpenter who is good at building the roof. And if I take, for example, your approach, you start off, definitely you will have to start off with the foundation, and you only concentrate on one house. So that means whenever you start off with the foundation, the other guys, they might have to wait till the foundation is fixed. I'm not saying that you are right or wrong. I'm just trying to build a conversation around the answer that you have. Okay. Then, I mean, is there any other better way to do this thing? Or else, can we take the same approach?
Probably in this case, we lay the foundation of one, use the 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Other who are good at building one, let's say, good work, other work, they can at the same time design or conceptualize that this is what we do once it is done. Once these guys are done with foundation, they come to the actual job. Oh, maybe.
Yeah, good point. Now, you're thinking in the kind of agile way. Now, normally, I mean, when it comes to agile also, there are 2 key words that comes into play. One is called efficiency, and the other word is called effectiveness. And efficiency and effectiveness are 2 different things. And if we only think in terms of efficiency, I mean, one would say, okay, we just start off with the foundation, because people will get specialized. You start off laying one foundation, then for the second foundation it takes less time, because people are getting more and more specialized. That is one thing. And point number 2, I mean, if you want to build thick foundation, you can get raw material in bulk. That means per head or unit cost would become lower. If you concentrate on just one foundation, the unit cost might become higher. So you think in terms of efficiency, and this might be the approach. When you concentrate on the foundation, you finish it off, and then you start off with the walls, and then you finish all the walls, and then you start off with the roof, and then you're done with the house. Now we will try to think about the pros and cons of this particular. How it has taken, let's say, not maybe 3 years, maybe a little bit less than, because now people has got specialized. So maybe during the 4th and 5th house, maybe they would have built it with less than 6 months. So you have 6 houses, completely very well engineered, designed, done after, let's say, 2.5 years. Okay, what sort of disadvantages will they have. We start from that.
They're building wrong, then they're building all these 6 buildings wrong.
Good. If they don't get one right, then all 6 would be true. Let's assume that they are kind of skilled people. Most probably their design is quite good. So because of that, maybe their output is also quite good. So maybe there can be small mistakes, but still acceptable. Let's assume like that. Any other kind?
Only one set of skilled workers are working at one point of time in this kind of setting.
Only one set of skilled workers are
working at one point.
Okay. But let's say now the goal would be to deliver the product in the shortest period of time. I mean, our objective is not to make sure that everyone is working to their full capacity all the time. Right? Am I correct? So because of that, in that context, maybe even if we keep some people idle for a short period of time, still it might be good. On the other hand, let's say if I go back now, let's say if we start off with the foundation, one set of people will start off with the foundation, and then normally in real scenarios, if one foundation is finished, the others can start off building the wall. So they don't need to wait till all the 6 foundations are finished. So we can take that into account as well. So most probably, rather than thinking about building one house, this process might be, even in that angle also, might be a little bit efficient in that way.
Yeah, that's what I said in the beginning, right? Parallel.
So you do one and then you do one and then you parallelize. Okay, we consider that approach as well. Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Right. Any other concerns? I mean, there can be some kind of obvious, disadvantage.
Depends on the customer to invest
Yes.
In which case, you might want to sell the first house after 6 months, the second house after 2. In which case, both you and one house are fine. Both you want to 3 years.
So what you're saying is maybe the customer might be able to buy the house in a shorter period of time rather than wait for 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Trying to sell 6 houses at once, but
exactly. Very good point. Exactly. The thing is, like, for example, you have 6 houses to be sold after 2.5 years, and those houses might be, even though they are kind of very well engineered and designed, the design might be slightly outdated as well because it has taken like 2.5 years. And the other drawback, as you mentioned, we are not getting any revenue right throughout this period because we have focused on building and building and building. So we don't get a single cent until 2.5 years. That is also a kind of a drawback. And on top of that, we have a kind of like outdated houses, not one, but we have 6. So how do you sell those kind of houses, even though they are very well engineered? I don't know. In Sri Lanka, there's a particular way of doing those kind of things.
What we failed here is to do the continuous delivery.
Exactly.
That's the point, right? That's why I was saying it's parallel, right? What you do is sequence-wise. The operation, lay the foundation one, other guy is working on this, right? And the third unit of people are working on this. The house one will finish first, then house two second, then house two third, right? And that way you have done the continuous delivery, right?
Yes.
So you're not preparing all these 6 houses at the same time, and customer gets to validate and verify the first product and have the desired changes on the later one, right? I guess.
Yeah, true, quite true. It's like you just deliver continuously and then you get the feedback, and then you build upon the feedback so that you can have tighter changes on the data iteration. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, for example, the customer might not be happy as well. But then what you can do is, in Sri Lanka, what we do is if you have a lot of things to sell, we just put the labels on sale and we reduce the price a little bit. What happens? People come and buy. I don't know whether it happens in India. In Sri Lanka, it happens.
So we don't find places to sell now.
It's saturated. Right. Then again, if you take the other approach, and as you mentioned, like the agile way of doing things, we concentrate on one house, we build it, we make sure that it's a finished product. And then after not maybe 6 months, maybe it might take about 8 months. And then till it's a finished product, it is finished after 8 months. So most probably it might be kind of latest one. And then you can sell it. And you have just one house to be sold, and you have a high demand. Right? You have a low supply, high demand, the price goes up. And then you can maybe get the adoption based on the feedback that you get from the customers, and then build for the next one. Okay, that is true. But then again, I'm just going back to the 2 words that I mentioned: efficiency and effective.
Yeah.
And is this an efficient way of doing?
This is effective, but may not be effective.
Exactly. This is effective, but may not be an efficient. Normally, what happens is, if you take the traditional way of doing things, you always strive for efficiency. Being efficient is good. Remember that. Being efficient is really good. But being effective is even better. And normally, I mean, what we need to think is to be more effective rather than being efficient. There are, to elaborate that, I can take different examples. Like, for example, let's say, I'll take a very simple example. Let's say you have a cheetah in the jungle. And how do we assess a cheetah, whether a cheetah is a good cheetah or not? Kind of stupid question.
Is it still alive?
Yes, it is.
Doing better than some.
Any thoughts? Cheetah, and you need to assess this cheetah, whether it's a good cheetah or not. In cheetah's context, not human context. Okay, historical details to get what?
The idea.
Okay. Well, how can you elaborate the word back?
And
Running fast.
Why do you say not running fast? Because then it will take it break, is it? But in cheetah's context, running fast would be the best way, isn't it?
Yes, whether he can hunt or not, effectively. That's the most important thing.
Very good, very good. I mean, running fast would be more like the efficiency. But why do it need to run fast? Maybe to hunt. But I don't say it's for hunting. Maybe there can be a cheetah who can survive and just stay peaceful. Even that might be even better. So it's based on the outcome, not the output. It's the outcome. Output and outcome are again two different. And Agile is all about looking at the proper outcome. Same thing. I will move on. I don't think I need to go through this slide. Then change requirements. I mean, this is again very obvious in life. For example, if you take the traditional way of developing things, what happens is, let's say you have a project which lasts for 1 year. Then you come to the customer at the beginning and say, okay, look here, we will deliver the product after 1 year's time. What are the requirements that you have? Then the customer will try to forecast what he needs after 1 year's time. And the customer will never say, these are things that I need right now, because they know that after 1 year's time, there can be more requirements coming in. So they have to imagine the future and then come up with different requirements, which they might never use even after 1 year's time. But on the other hand, what happens is, we know in Agile way of doing things, like if you take the traditional approach, there will be a gap. So what happens is, customer will try to predict what the gap is, which in the business context kind of impossible to do. But if you take the Agile approach, customers know, okay, we can just simply say these are the most important things that we need right now. And they know that they have the flexibility of changing things in the future. So what happens after the short iterative cycles, you can always work towards customers' requirements. And again, this might not be a very efficient way of doing things, but still, it's more effective for the customer. That's what all about. Okay, and then I'm not taking all the different principles. I'm picking few principles. I mean, business people and developers are working together, and working together is also a kind of very important thing when it comes to Agile content. This is a kind of very, very common thing that you can use everywhere. Most people might have seen, like you have the stakeholders, you have the business systems analyst, and then you have the mighty software developers, and then you have the testers and the managers who works on their different silos to make sure that things get done. And then what happens is, this is again kind of a common thing, like, customer will forecast and give us the requirement. And then, it will go on like this, this is how the analyst design it. And these are the programmer what it, this is what the marketing experience is. And then this is what the customer actually needs. You can remember there's a difference between what customer has mentioned and what customer needs as well. Simply because customer needs to forecast. So, I mean, if we work together to achieve what customer needs, maybe this can be reduced. And that's why it says, like, people have to work, different people, it contains different skills, has to work together to achieve the goal. And it has to be supported by different things, like, for example, effective communication and, having common goals and, quick feedback cycles and different various things. And then most probably, as you mentioned, like, having quick iterative cycles, you can always work towards giving a better solution. So the solution might not be exactly what the customer mentioned earlier, but working together with the customer towards their needs, most probably we can achieve a better product to the customer as well as for us. That's what all this is about. Any thoughts around it or any questions? And interesting. A face-to-face conversation, even in Agile, even whether it's Agile or not, in any business context where you have distributed team, having real-time conversations is quite important. And even though we have different tools to to send information, it might not work. And I normally use a very, very basic example in the basic. It explains everything. Just try to read this, assume it's the specification. Just read this specification and give me the products. Very simple.
Or
okay. So I'm the customer. I just gave you this functional specification, and you are the product team. You just delivered me a horse. Actually, as a customer, this is what I expect. I have given some proof also, because otherwise people might think, oh, I'm not doing that. I give some proof. And it's nothing wrong with the people who do the development. Nothing wrong with the people who give the requirement. About communication, you can use the same word to give different meaning, isn't it? It all depends on the context. So having an interactive conversation is very, very important, especially in the type of businesses that we all do. And in Agile, it highlights a lot. It says it's one of the core values. It says individuals and interactions over process and tools. So you have to have process and tools, but what is important is actually to have individuals and interactions. That is quite important. Communication methods, we all know, I don't like to go through it. Again, this is some obvious thing. It says a lot about having working software. I'll try to elaborate this a little bit. And now, let's say you have, if you do any kind of development, you need to have an analysis phase, you need to have a design phase, you need to have the implementation, and then you need to have this testing phase. It's obvious. And you have the same amount of resources. Maybe technical limitations, functional limitations, time, everything. And what you do is, let's say you just keep on developing like this, and then, how many times have you heard, on this particular item, 50% of the work is done, or just 50% remains. But for the customer, it's zero delivered, isn't it? Because even though the 50% of work is done, still for the customer it has zero. Instead, what we do is, just by keeping the same resources, what we do is we just try to turn this around, and then we try to concentrate on small features which adds the business as well. And then what you do is you take a very, very small functional feature, and you do a small analysis part, design part, development part, and implementation part on that feature. And then what happens is, after 50% of the time has taken in, it's again still it's 50% done. But for the customer, 50% delivered, and whatever things which are delivered is 100% usable for the customer. So we have the same resources. The only thing is we just turn it around. The way we do things, we just simply turn it around. And then you just deliver some value for the customer, even though you are done with 50%. And let's assume that these are the items which are kind of most wanted for the customer. The customer would be even more satisfied. In practical life also, we do the same thing. Like, for example, if you take a cake, you normally don't eat a cake layer by layer, isn't it? You take a slice where you get all the different tastes, and then you eat. It's more like that. If you take a big business requirement, what you do is you just try to break the business requirement into smaller features, which adds the customer value. And remember, those small features might not be a feature which can be taken into market right away, but it should add a business value to the customer. That's the important thing. And then it talks a lot about sustainable development as well. When it comes to sustainable development, if you all have done projects in the kind of traditional way, I think you all have experience like this. Maybe when you have this project kickoff or maybe project startup, you all will be will relax and you have plenty of time, plenty of resources to finish off the project. And then maybe in the middle, you all might have started working on some serious stuff. And towards the end, most probably, you all might be like this because you are meeting the deadline and your features are not working and the customers are complaining. It's quite hectic. But in Agile, what it says is it's more like sustainable development. Normally, in terms of what they say is it's not like running a sprint, 100-meter sprint. It's more like running a marathon, where you start off with a certain amount of pace, and then you make sure that you run with the same consistency right throughout. That is really important, and that helps people to be sustainable. And Agile is all about being sustainable. Again, a simple example I'll take. Now, if you take any species, if I ask a very stupid question, is it the weakest who has survived? Definitely the answer would be no. But the interesting question would be, is it the strongest who has survived? Then you start thinking, right, whether it's the strongest who has survived. Who has survived? It's the most adaptable who has survived. If you think about sustainable development, you have to be adaptable to survive. And Agile is mainly about sustainable development, being sustained in the market. That means to sustain, definitely you have to be adaptable. Okay. And then another point is all about, it talks a lot about technical excellence. And here sometimes people, feel this is a little bit contradictory because you talk a lot about, catering design changes, and that, to have a very solid design, you have to have all the requirements upfront and you need to come up with a very, very solid design. And then what Agile says is you need to cater the change requirements. And on the other hand, they say Agile is all about technical excellence. And can we have, are we able to do, cater both, like, cater the change requirements and to make sure that we reach the technical excellence? Agile clearly says, it's not about, poor quality or poor design or, quick and dirty. It's clear, it's not about it. Then how can we achieve it? That's the next question. We're talking a lot about quality and we're talking about catering customers' requirements. It conflicts a little, isn't it? How do we achieve this? It's two conflicting things. And actually, that is where test automation comes in. I don't know whether you use test automation a lot. If you want to be agile, if you want to cater customers' needs quite rapidly, you have to have test automation. Test automation comes in different angles. You can start off with the lowest level, like, things like static code analysis, and then you can build on top of that, like, maybe API testing, unit testing, and then you can have, a business flow test, and then you can have the tip of the iceberg where you do your manual exploratory testing only. So, having test automation is a very important factor to make sure that you deliver continuously. If you do your test manually all the time, I don't think that you'll be able to deliver continuously, because you will be delivering small and small features, and all this time you have to make sure that those are being tested, and then you have to have your integration test in place, and then it won't work. Simply won't work. Because of that, test automation plays a big role in Agile world. Some examples, like, test-driven development, and then you have continuous integration test, and there are different various types of testing. If you're interested, maybe I can talk a little bit about test automation, but still it's a different area. Any thoughts around this or any questions?
cater for.
True, automation testing won't fit poor design. That's true. But early detection is there. Like for example, if you do a change, then it is rectified that it has broken this area.
It will tell us one of designing where you are breaking the design in increment because you're not looking like
In that case, what you are not doing is that you break your features and you don't take the time to fix those. And instead what you do is just that keep on delivering it. Then it won't work. So what you should do is you have to make sure that whatever things that you have broken in should be taken into the next following sprint, and you have to make sure that those are being. So normally in Agile world, what you say is if you complete a sprint, if you deliver something, it is considered as done. That means tested, documented, and customer accepted. Let's say if it tested, then it's some test fail. That means it has to be prioritized. It has to be fixed as soon as possible. Until that is fixed, you simply can't take it as a finished product.
it can be valid test, it can be each sprint.
What you're saying is, let's say, if you take one sprint, you deliver it, yes, acceptable. If you take the overall design, what you're saying is,
The previous slide which says can't have the working.
yeah,
The quick and
we can
dirty
get
fixes.
this, yes.
Thing is that automated testing won't fit. Needing the quick and dirty fix that glue the sprints together.
Is it like, for example, if you have business flow test, business flow test is something not only just a very simple flow. It might be a kind of complex flow. And in your sprint, maybe you are doing a small thing, but it might break the entire flow. That means it should be rectified. So in that case, you can be, you can just work on that to make sure that. Yes, sometimes at certain intervals, you might need to do refactoring. Let's say you start developing and then you realize that, your code is breaking these flaws. And then you simply can't fix it with, simple fixes. Then at this point, you need to do a refactoring. True.
That's one of the drawbacks of Agile, because you are never looking at the complete picture and building one story as one complete block. And then you might have reusable components in your first story, which you need in third story, which you would never forecast, right? So see, we work in Agile a lot, right? So what we have to do is, okay, so now this is sprint third. Oh, you know what? We could have done it this way, so we could have reused it, and then we go back and we break our information architecture. Something which was tested, working, customer accepted is broken again. That's a real life scenario. You refix your information architecture, you build the presentation, and you retest everything. And in our case, we are doing everything 100% manual testing. Okay. So just imagine our amount of pain that we get every time.
So why do you do manual testing all the time?
Yeah, because the way, if you are working on CMS system, okay, and let's say you're working on something like Umbraco, there is very little available that you can do on testing for information architecture or presentation architecture or your various components, because you do have testings there, but they're mostly for the API. Even if you try to do testing of automatic testing of UI, there is no foolproof today. If you say Selenium is there, okay, it does a wonderful job, but still, ultimately, the test function, the functional test, has to be done by a human being to ensure everything goes right.
We can automate the APIs, automate the data flows. What we struggle with is the business.
Well, the company that
There's
I work
business
for,
rules that causes.
yeah, it's quite true.
Yeah.
If I try to maybe bring in the experience that I have, like the company that I work for, or IFS applications, maybe you all might have heard, it's a ERP system, which has a very, very big business load, which has different flaws, and we have different clients as well. And one thing that we do, I'm not saying that we are 100% doing it, but we are still striving towards it, and we still have some flaws. Like, we use the tools like, for example, coded UI test. Maybe you might have heard about it. So what we do is we try to, automate some of the business flow. But when it comes to designing what business flows which needs to be tested, what we do is actually we have, we do have a different product areas, and we have all the business flows, not all, most of the business flows recorded in HPA. Where we do have this, the business flow that needs to be tested for each and every release. And then what we try to do is, through this coded UI test, we try to automate, the key business flows. And then those tests are run in the integration environments every day. And whatever the time a developer does breaks the code, then it is identified. And then there will be business systems analysts who will try to look manually and try to make sure that those are being fixed. As you mentioned, it's not a silver bullet.
See, the point is, you are building a full-blown ERP system, right?
Yeah.
Now look at, I'm building a customer site, which I have to do in a CMS system, and I have to deliver in 3 months.
Yeah.
Where the hell I have the time to build all this coded UI test, right? For me, it gets very challenging. Maybe building the test will take more. We used to do it like in, I was brave in 2008, we used to use RESTful roles to do this, test control language and record the UIs and run the business flow that you're talking right now, right? And I still believe there are tools available in industry which can record your business flow and repeat it as many times after all of your integration.
Like for example,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. For example, SUGSL, right? But then where for me it might be challenging. I'm just talking my perspective, right? Because I'm doing a site in Ombraco, the customer wants it in 3 months, okay, and they have designed Agile. They're working on Agile. The customer wants every week, okay, build this, deliver it. So every week it becomes very, very crazy. So we say, okay, 2 weeks, right? Okay, and at the end of the 2 weeks, we will.
So do you deliver it to the customer's production environment itself, or you have a separate test environment?
We deliver on UAT.
Okay.
And then the end customer does the UAT testing, right? And then they say accept it, and then we move it to live. So we are doing it feature by feature, right? But then what I'm still saying, that because of there is no forecast, we end up, breaking something, rebuild, and then do everything manually again, because we really don't have so much time to record all those features, because customer keeps on changing their requirement. Okay. So they will say, okay, one day the calendar should look like this. Other they say, no, the calendar should look like this and it should behave like this. So part of Agile is working very good for us, and part of it where we have to automate, probably we are lacking into it. I will say that we don't find that much time or resources to make it foolproof. That okay, test driven. This is truly test. Till continuous environment.
To maybe challenge one of the statements that you mentioned, like you said that customer keep on changing their requirement. Yeah. Now in Agile, what we talk a lot is about working together. And what I would suggest is actually you have to make the customer understand. Okay, what we are trying to do is the best for you. So you have to make sure that you have to tell us what you really want, and then he will tell us, and then we take a line. And then the next day he comes in and say, okay, this is not the way I want it. I want like this. Then you can be frank. Okay, fine. We can do the next request, but we have already done this. Now to do this, we need to do a refactoring in the code itself. It takes 1 week. Do you still want to do this at the cost of 1 week? If so, fine, we can do it.
They simply say sprint 2, the next sprint. Please give it in next sprint, right? So they will accept the sprint that we have delivered, and they will not say good or bad. They will say change request.
Okay. So just curious though, right? For example, do you do things in the Scrum way of doing this, or is it a different Scrum?
Scrum.
So that means, do you have product owner? Who's the product owner? Is it the customer or customer? Customer. Right. Then normally what Scrum says is the product owner will say what they want and the priority, and the team will say how it is done and how much they can take in a sprint. In your case, can the team say to customer, okay, this is the requirement that we have found with. Okay, to do this, we during this sprint, these are the items that we could do. We simply can't take any more in. Does that happen? No, customer comes in and forces you to do no.
Customer will give us the wish list, the stories.
Okay.
I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, right? And then we will ask one of our developer to estimate the time, break them into things which could be done together to minimize the breaking things later. Okay, we do it smartly our end, right?
No, that's correct. We prioritize.
Yeah. Okay.
Over the refactor.
Yeah.
You will prioritize the features or the refactor. When you say week, is it the product only?
It seems to be a global week. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Normally,
the customer is driving the request.
now, let's say, okay, the customer is the person who drives the features, and he always wants a feature. He doesn't really care about the refactoring. But then the question that I need to ask is, do you, show the customer the value of refactoring? Like, if you don't refactor at this point, this would be the functional drawback that you would have.
Now the problem is that most of the customer will not accept our side of it. They will say, okay, technically you face this issue, I don't care. I want this.
You did it wrong in the first place.
Yeah. So that's another interesting problem, right? And people will agree. So if they will give me 10 features, I'll say these 3, and they will say these 3 are prioritized, right?
Okay.
So we prioritize and we say, you know what? I think if you do feature number 8 with this sprint, it will make more sense. Because then I'm thinking in the background, I will not have to refactor.
Okay.
Okay? That's my strategy, right? And then the customer will say, what, I really don't want it in sprint 2. I want it in sprint 4. Okay? And it's the customer who wants the feature, right? So if you're smart and if there was a foreseeability, then you will refactor in advance so that on sprint 4, you have less to break and build again. Okay? So we practice this, and like our project are small, 2 months, 3 months. So it works for us. So agile, but yeah, we customized it.
But I mean, again, coming back to the same place that you mentioned. Right?
Yeah.
Let's say you said that you have feature 1, then you have feature 8, which has a correlationship, and then you know that if you build feature 1 with the feature 8, it's more efficient, and then you don't need to refactor. But if not, you need to do a refactoring. It takes more time. And then when you mention that to the customer comes and say, no, 8 is needed after sprint. We don't need to have it at the second. Let's say you mention the same thing, it's like different. You just go to the customer and say, look here, I will deliver feature 1, 2, 3 during this sprint, and then 4, 5, 6 during the next sprint, and then feature 8 during the 5th sprint. That's fine. But if I deliver feature 1 together with 8, I will deliver 1, 2, 3, and 8 during this sprint, and maybe the rest during the next sprint. Then customers start seeing the business value from their angle, because for the customer, all what he wants is the business to run. So I mean, it's the same thing that we are mentioning, but in slightly different.
No, that's perfectly okay. It's just if you can persuade the customer to do it. If you want, you're saying that I will deliver 8 with the 1 itself, okay, and I'm giving you more value, then I might be resource challenged because the customer has already posted the amount of job, like feature 1 to 3, in 2 weeks, which I'm already finding challenging. And then I'm also including feature 8, which is supposed to take 1 more week, right? So it just depends, right? If you have a good customer, they'll say, okay, fine, give it me, and it's okay. And you have a customer who is time challenged, right? They'll say, no, man, I just want it in 2 weeks. Okay, you do your feature 8. Then what I could do is, maybe if I have resource, I'll put some extra guys and I'll build it in advance, but I will not deliver it.
Okay, that's up to you.
And that's what we handle. That's how we handle, right? Okay. So like we are running now a full sprint of a project right now, and the customer was like, good in this case. We designed all the features in advance, gave us 3-month plan in advance for 6 sprint, and we could see, oh, you know what? We could do this in sprint 1 itself. And we did sprint 3 in sprint 1 itself. Now my guys are free for sprint 3, and I can put them to learn something. Okay. But it just depends. Like if there's a foreseeability, we can use Agile and then ensure that we are least affected in later sprint. If I don't have any foreseeability, we might have to break and build. And then this automated testing thing is the lifesaver, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, I mean, when it comes to automation, also, like as I understood, like if you have a single customer, a project to be delivered to a single customer for a short period of time, maybe this automation might not work for you. Maybe simple things like static code analysis might work for you because it's less effort and more benefit. But maybe level testing like UI testing might not work for you.
So the thing that we are discussing here is definitely makes sense for a full-blown product development lifecycle.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you're doing, CMS kind of thing, small websites implementation, then probably we have to pick the good bits.
And then you have, yes.
Yeah.
So quite true. I agree. I mean, when it comes to Agile, as I mentioned earlier, so it's not about, setting a set of guidelines. more like, trying to have the same mindset and trying to pick what is useful for you. But doing that, remember another very important fact, that is, when it comes to Agile, we have different components. And all these components, tie quite together. Now, what happens is sometimes you see a problem in one component, you think, okay, this is not working. It's data is not working. Then the actual problem might not be at the setup itself. It might be some other place. Let's say you talk a lot about self-organizing team. And then you just say, okay, I'm just I have my team, and I just simply let them self-organize. But then it doesn't happen. Like, people are, they are not performing to the expectation that I have. Then I will say, okay, no, I need to, control them because they are not being self-organized. But the problem would be, like, for example, the entire system might not have a common goal. If you don't have a common goal, system will itself never organize because people will have their own personal goal. Then what needs to be fixed would be to have a common goal and make sure that all people have that vision. If that happens, self-organizing happens. But then people might think, okay, I have two people who are kind of anti-agile and they are not trying to be self-organized. I just simply try to control them. Then the entire system will not be self-organized. I mean, those kind of simple things have to be a little bit careful on those kind of. If not, you can just pick whatever which is important. But remember that as well. Okay, so I will move on. I think I'm almost done. Simplicity. I mean, again, I don't think I have to tell you. I mean, customized database things, but we always try to give a very good design. We try to. I mean, whatever the features we design would be the best. That's true. But if the customer is not using it, then there's no point. I mean, we have heard plenty of complaints from software engineers. I have done this, very fantastic algorithm, and I simply don't get any, customer is not happy. But he just asked for a simple column to be added. I just added by just within 5 minutes, and customer is really happy. This customer is really stupid. But the actual reason would be for the customer that might be even more beneficial for them to run their business. So you have to make sure that simplicity is. And I mean, there's a very, very good saying. Maybe you might have seen this. The designer knows he has achieved perfection, not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. So it's more about trying to make sure that whatever you delivered is being used by the customer. That is quite important.
Don't give them.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Self-organizing teams, again, I touched a little bit. And then, the other important thing would be becoming more effective when it goes about, inspecting and adapting. Again, I touched on this area. Agile is all about inspecting and adapting to the proper way. And that is quite important as well. Any other questions that you have now? I'm almost done, but I'm really good if you have more questions and quite interesting as well. Or do you have any other things that needs to be clarified?
Any agile process, any kind?
When you say the word any kind, it's quite often.
Let's say some systems have we can deliver only finished complete system.
Okay.
Let's say some like we are going to make a system which is like aeroplane system.
Yeah.
Then we can't deliver different by different because of client. Then client is not happy. How can we apply?
To answer your question, actually, still it is possible. I mean, I think when I mentioned, also I mentioned a word like, when you do things in agile way, you always try to deliver a business value. But a business value doesn't necessarily mean that it's a feature which can be used in the market. Marketable feature and a business value is two different. Let's say, if I take a simple example, let's say my project is to deliver this control thing. This is my product. And I mean, to make it as a finished product, I have to have a certain set of features, isn't it? If not, customer will not use it in the market. But then when I start doing the development, I mean, there can be different approaches that I can take. Obvious approach would be I'll start off with the circuit board. I just design the entire circuit board, put all the ICs in place, put the power source. Then 50% of the work is done again, but 0% usable for the customer. But it's efficient again.
But delivered is not marketed.
Exactly.
Different. Okay. you can take an application, example of a Winbird kind of application, right? You cannot deliver a Winbird kind of application unless you can open a file, edit it, and save it, right? Minimum 4. Things like this, where you have to adopt Agile, in this kind of application, you first find out the basic core features. And those will be delivered.
Simple example, I don't know whether you remember, when Google delivered Gmail at the beginning, you can remember, they only had the feature of sending mails and receiving, and that's it. It was in the production, and we started using it. It didn't even have the draft facility, but still people started using it. But maybe not in the commercial way, because there are certain key features missing. But you just make sure that you deliver it to the production with the minimal requirements. But it might not be a marketable thing. But still, based on that, on top of that, you can start building, because the customer will start seeing value on it. So to answer your question, yes, it is possible. But maybe, maybe after 2 sprints, you might not deliver something which can be used in the market itself. But still, after 2 sprints, you still deliver some business value to the customer. And it adds value, because customer can always give you feedback.
Most important thing is, it works.
Exactly.
Most important thing is, it works. The 2 features work, and then you got the feedback on it. So you deliver 2 features, and it happens with so many times with us. A software works nicely on our environment. You take it to production environment and crap, it will not boot it up. Okay. You take this software to a production environment, and on your machine, you are the only guy connecting to it. It works fine. On a production machine, there are 30 connections trying to adapt it. It just will take 9, and then you realize, oh, you know what? There is a cap. You cannot have more than 9 connections, and then you will realize that it's broken. It works, but it works in your own environment. So that essentially you realize there after delivering that it is broken. Even the client was testing with 1 connection at one point. This happened with us recently.
When you say done, there has to be a kind of understanding between all the stakeholders. When we say done, this is what means done. Any other questions or thoughts? Not necessarily, I would say. Like, what customer should know is you should always show the customer this is the business value that we are going to deliver. Whether it's agile or not, we always want to give it to the customer. As long as the customer sees a business value, whether you do agile or not, still the customer would be happy.
But the customer needs to be involved.
That's important.
If there's no customer involved with agile,
you will fail for sure.
In which case, you may as well go water. Just I've done everything. Here's your product. Even if you did it internally as if it was an agile product.
Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, print 7, there you go. There's your system.
That's why you're always talking to your customer in the evening, half an hour every day.
For example, if you take your vehicle to a service station, let's say if you take a car to high-tech service station, they just take your car. Say, after 6 hours, we'll deliver your car. Then they just post everything. Are you happy? No. Even they do kind of a slightly shitty job. Still, if you can see what is happening, you're always happy, isn't it? Same with the software development as well. Nothing. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. And if you have any other questions, you can catch me through email or whatever. I think you can share my I'll share the site as well. You can put it maybe site down. Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
We'll have one special
Stop the recording.
Okay.